Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of College Football Game Day Live. I'm your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports, the godfather of recruiting. Mike, how you doing on another glorious Saturday of college football?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing great, especially after ECU held serve last night against BYU. Always good to get the weekend going with a winner, and then you come in playing with the house of money on Saturday. So I'm
like ECU. You were right on ECU a couple weeks ago too, when I told you were wrong.
ECU's my squad. I'm riding with the Pirates. It's all aboard onto that pirate ship, and we're going to ride this thing out all season. Guys, Mike and I are going to be live with you for the next 90 minutes, running through as much of the college football card as we can possibly get to. We're also going to be answering audience questions throughout. So if you have any, please put them into the chat, and we will get to them numerous times during the show. Also want to thank our title sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for a new account today using the promo code CFB Pros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and you're going to get a free $50 bet. Mike, we got a lot of games to get to today, so let's get started. We'll start with the biggie at noon Eastern, the big noon Eastern kickoff. Ohio State is a 14.5 or 15.5 at some books right now favorite at Penn State. We got an over-under of this game of 60.5. What's your angle on this one?
I like the over. Usually I pick a side in this game. In this one, Penn State obviously coming off a really poor performance against Michigan. They rebounded well, but everybody criticizing James Franklin for not being able to win the big one and his record against top 10 teams and all that stuff. And I just have a sneaky suspicion that Penn State's going to keep this game closer than a lot of people expect. But I also have a suspicion that they're going to score more points than we saw against Michigan. I think they match up a little bit better, honestly, against Ohio State, which sounds stupid. But when you're talking about their ability to hopefully run the football, their run defense was exposed, but their pass defense can still be solid. And I think they can get some pressure on CJ Stroud. So I got the over. I think this is going to be, a bit of a high scoring game. And if I had to pick a side, I would take Penn State.
And my lean is going to be towards Penn State too. It's been hard for me though to get that from a lean to an actual bet when you're going to stand on the tracks against this Ohio State team. But Penn State recently has played Ohio State closer than, at least than this spread would indicate. Although they've been in losing efforts. Last 3 games, Buckeyes have won by an average of 11 points per game, obviously under this spread. My stronger angles in this game, it's on the prop side. And Mike, I'm curious if you sniffed out any player props in this one. I want the over on the Ohio State rushing props against a bad Penn State run defense, and I'm going under on the Penn State run props. But meanwhile, I'm also going to be going under on the Ohio State passing props. CJ Stroud has not been as sharp this year as maybe his counting stats would suggest. Penn State's secondary is one of the best in the nation, and it is very deflection happy, led by Joey Porter Jr. and the whole ensemble cast. The Penn State pass defense is the good thing. Penn State's pass defense should be able to constrict CJ Stroud, at least to a degree. We've already seen that we're going to get Jackson Smith and Jigba on a pitch count again, so you can't expect a full strength him. It's going to be the Marvin Harrison show again. Because of all that stuff, I do lean Penn State on the side, like I was mentioning. But you do have to mention also, even the recent history is the one thing. But under James Franklin, Penn State is 2-14 against top 10 teams, and they're 0-10 against top 10 teams since the 2016 championship game. So I'm going to lean Penn State regardless of that. But like I said, my stronger angles in that game are on the prop side. Mike, moving to our next one at noon Central. Notre Dame traveling to Syracuse. Syracuse takes their first loss last week, but they played Clemson tough. And if it wasn't for some circumstances late in that game, Syracuse very well may have pulled it out. Clemson obviously comes from behind. Now Syracuse got to turn around. You're hosting this Notre Dame team that obviously is not analogous to some of the Notre Dame teams of the past couple of years. Still dangerous, though. Syracuse is a 1.5-point favorite. This line has been toggling between like 1 and 2.5 all week. And it never really got to 3 that I saw. Maybe just briefly at a couple bucks. But right now, Syracuse 1.5-point favorite with a total on this game of 47.5. Who do you like in this one, Mike? What side?
I do like Syracuse, and I do have a prop in this one. So the number for Drew Pine is 202, 0.5 passing yards, right? It doesn't sound like a lot. But I got the under here, 202.5 passing yards under Drew Pine. He's been bad the last 2 games. He's turned the ball over. His completion percentage is awful. And this Syracuse defense is extremely good, as we've seen. Their secondary is very, very good. The game plan here is going to be to minimize any potential mistakes he could make and try to win this one in sort of an ugly slugfest. They're not going to be able to do that. I think Syracuse is going to win this football game. I think they're going to cover the line as well. The signs point to under. I do like the ugliness of this game. I think this is going to be a run-oriented football game, and I think it's going to be low scoring with a few turnovers. But take that under for Drew Pine too. I don't think he's going to pass for over 200 yards in this game.
Yeah, and Mike, the lean on the total, I got the same lean as you. I also have the same pick on this side. I do like Syracuse in this game. The one. One of the ways you can sort of start to nick them is like this idea that this could be a deflation spot after losing to Clemson. But Syracuse, they gave Clemson everything they could handle. Their effort has not been a problem in any game this year. I find it hard to believe that a home game against Notre Dame for this Syracuse team that was so bad these past couple of years, Dino Babers was on the hot seat. Now their effort's not going to be there for Notre Dame. Like, just because they lost their first game, I don't really see that happening. And Syracuse can do so many different things. The defense is really, really good. It's taken a jump up this year, and now they can pass in addition to run. Your point about the props too, I found that really interesting because I also think that this is sort of a prime prop game. I lean the under, and I haven't seen the numbers right now. If the props are up on the book, they weren't as of last night at 2 a.m. I hate that they don't put them out on Fridays, but I would lean the I would lean the over on both teams' rushing props. And I'm going under on all the passing props because of how good the pass defenses are outside of Michael Mayer for Notre Dame. Syracuse has not been good at defending opposing tight ends. Syracuse's overall coverage grade is awesome because their boundary corners are really good. Their safeties are good. But again, opposing tight ends have found a way to nick Syracuse throughout the season, especially the higher end ones they play. They don't have a guy to match up with Michael Mayer. And that's not any sort of indictment on their defense. Nobody has anybody to match up with Michael Mayer. But in particular, that's been one way opposing offenses have attacked Syracuse. Notre Dame's certainly going to do that. And Michael Mayer is going to have a lot of success in this game. As far as this side, Syracuse is 6-1 against the spread this season. It's the second best cover rate in the entire FBS. They're also 5-1 as a home favorite against the spread since the start of last season. I'm going to lean towards Syracuse and trust that orange offense, but I'm going to go the over on the Michael Mayer props. Mike, moving to our next game up on the docket here, another noon kickoff Eastern. We have Arkansas traveling to Auburn. Another game with sort of an interesting line where the Sharps seem to be on the Auburn side of this one. But right now it is holding steady at Arkansas by 3.5 on the road. We have a total in this game of 60.5 live. What's your angle on this game?
I like Arkansas here. I think, and I have another prop here too, which is a lot of early props for you to try to at least make money or dig out of a hole, depending on how good I am. But KJ Jefferson is going to score a rushing touchdown in this one. The over is 0.5 rushing TDs at Auburn. It's a plus 105 too, which I like. I always like, most props are a negative 110, 115 or whatever. So I always try to find plus props when I can get it. So you can bet money and get that same money back. He rushed for a touchdown in each of his 4 games, and he's been shut out on the ground the last couple games. This is going to be Arkansas running the football, not only with, Raheem Sanders, but with KJ Jefferson. He's going to get a lot of carries. They're going to try to pound the ball. The Auburn rushing defense is bad. I mean, they've got the worst rushing defense in the SEC. They give up a lot of yards on the ground. It leans towards the under to me as well, because again, I think this is going to be sort of an ugly, sloppy game, but I'm not really solid on that number. I do like Arkansas to cover this one and KJ Jefferson to get in the end zone with his feet. I
like the angles there. And to your point about the run defenses, Auburn stinks, yes, and Arkansas stinks as well. So, like, sticking on to the props, the rushing on both sides, those are the angles that I'm looking to play in this one. The passing, you look at the passing defenses. Auburn's pass defense is certainly better than their run defense. Arkansas's is too. That's not saying a lot. The whole Arkansas defense is bad, but yeah, the rushing props on both sides, I would be looking to take the over. I was taking a look, Mike, as you were talking at the live lines. KJ Jefferson, the prop number I'm seeing right there is 51.5 for his rushing yards. Anytime TD on him was minus 251. First touchdown scored plus 600 for Jefferson. So
it's not a bad one either. First touchdown scored could it'd certainly be him.
6-1. I mean, it's not bad. My lean though is this might be our first disagreement. My lean on this one is the over, which it seems kind of weird because, you know, like playing an Auburn over or whatever, but Auburn has played at a much faster tempo, I think, this year than people assume. They're top 50 in the nation in neutral tempo. Arkansas, of course, is top 20. Arkansas is one of the fastest, you know, running teams in the nation. We know that both teams are going to be able to run the ball here in this game because the run defense are so bad. And, you know, and both rushing offenses are really good. That's going to keep the clock running, yes, but it's also going to keep both offenses on schedule the whole time. Even if the explosive plays aren't there, the chains are going to be moving constantly in this game. And with this total at, what is it, 60.5 right now? I'm not showing the most value on it. I was showing more earlier this week. Seems like some people have hit that over. My system's total on the game is 61.5. My system also leans towards Auburn on the side with setting a line at Arkansas minus 0.9 points. But I don't trust I don't trust Auburn as far as I can throw them. So I'm not able to back Auburn on the side. But I'm gonna lean towards that over. And then the prop angles, like I said, I agree with Mike. Take all the rushing props in this game. Maybe stay away from the passing ones, but the rushing props you're going to want.
And the over is 7-1 in the last 8 meetings here. So, I mean, that is a good point. I just think, you know, it's one of those things where a running offense against a horrible offense to me always equals below, you know, a 60 line. But the over 7-1 in the last 8 meetings, man. So, I mean, you might be onto something. Yeah,
and especially with Robbie Ashford taking over, teams with really good run defenses can shut down what Auburn wants to do because, as you know, Mike, Ashford's a great athlete. And a couple times I've watched him, he sort of opened my eyes with how good of an athlete he is, but so raw in the pocket right now. He makes some plays where it's like, oh, wow, you know, Robbie Ashford. But there's a lot where he's not seeing the right thing. He's making the wrong decision. He's panicking a little bit early and giving up on the play and starting to run. He's throwing it into a linebacker's chest plate. That's where it breaks down. But Arkansas's run defense can be exploited throughout the game.
Yeah, he's not a good quarterback. Sorry. He's a good running back. But he's
not yet for sure.
I don't think. First of all, I knew him in high school. Obviously, he was a kid out of Alabama that you know, was heavily recruited. And the more I watched him, he started off as a 4-star. He ended up as a 3-star. Just not a natural passer. Actually, a kid that I thought might change positions. So to your point, he can run the ball, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a good passer.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah. Jury's out on that for sure. Absolutely. The next game we got here, Mike, at another noon kickoff. TCU traveling to West Virginia. Are we finally going to get the letdown spot on the TCU side? Are they finally going to no-show an entire game? We've seen them struggle in some of these first halves that, you know, the past month or so, but they have not yet taken their first loss. Obviously, West Virginia, though, almost having very difficult venue to play in. TCU's been installed as a 7.5-point favorite. It stayed that way most of the week. It did toggle to 7 just very briefly at times, but then it would jump right back up to 7.5. We got a total on this game of 68.5. Mike, what do you like in this game?
I mean, it's 7 right now live on DraftKings.
Oh, it did come down. Okay.
Yeah, but I just changed my pick in our spreadsheet immediately just because everything I'm pointing towards, it tells me not to bet against TCU. Okay. You know, I thought Kansas State would take care of things. I thought Oklahoma State would take care of things. They both came, you know, they came charging back. They're never out of a football game. Duggan's playing great. Quentin Johnston's amazing. This is a team that believes in itself, but you're waiting for that fall. You're waiting for that letdown, as you mentioned. But then it's West Virginia, and West Virginia is not that good. And I don't know how much they have to play for at this stage of the season. But TCU's 1-4. My buddy Chife came up with these numbers. They're 1-4 in their last 5 meetings against the spread in West Virginia. They're 0-6 in the last 6 meetings against West Virginia. TCU doesn't match up well against West Virginia, so I just changed my pick. I'm saying West Virginia, maybe not to win, but to cover that 7.
Wow. Okay. You're switching over to almost 7.
Just like that.
Okay. I'm going to stick with TCU, especially now that it's 7. Although I do understand why the market is behind West Virginia. This is sort of the classic ambush spot after TCU. They've been, coming from behind, whatnot. When is that team going to run out of gas? And this would be a really good spot for it to happen with how difficult the venue is, like I said. However, I just can't trust West Virginia. I've seen that team play. I've seen their defense play. Anyone can rip them. If TCU shows up at all, their offense is going to score at will. Then, is West Virginia going to score at will to keep up with them? We'll see, because obviously TCU, their defense is what you can get or whatever. But TCU's defense has been okay at keeping opposing offenses off schedule. And that's where that broke down a little bit for me. TCU success rate against the pass on defense, they rank number 30. Rushing success rate, TCU defense ranks number 41. Where you can nick them, it's explosive plays. Like against the pass, they rank TCU's pass defense ranks 122nd in the nation. But here's the problem. Neil Brown, Mike, as you know, his entire yes, it's pass happy, but the entire thing's predicated not on the vertical passing game. It's the sideline to sideline passing game. He spreads you out, and then it's the Jarrett Dagey last year, this year JT Daniels. He gets the snap, and then he immediately turns to the left and throws it to a guy who has 2 guys out in front of him trying to block. It's most of the offense. You try to flower it out from there, but they don't headhunt downfield. They're not fishing for that stuff. They're not particularly good at it either, because they have sort of a dearth of playmakers on the outside there. West Virginia's passing explosion ranks 117th in the nation. So they're not able to exploit that defensive weakness at TCU. For those reasons, I'm going to overlook the spot a little bit as far as my lean goes. This is not an official play for me, but I'm going to lay the 7 points with TCU. Again, knowing that it could be a potential flat spot. Another thing I'd say about West Virginia, they've only played once since October 13th. They will be the fresher team, but again, there's a discrepancy in team quality. Can TCU, though, if they don't benefit from injury luck this time, are they going to play a complete game? In the past 4 games, Dylan Gabriel's been knocked out against TCU. Jalen Daniels was knocked out against TCU. Adrian Martinez, and then Will Howard was also knocked out against TCU. So they have been benefiting in some of these second half comebacks from quarterback injuries.
I got 2 things for you, and one is to hurt you on a Saturday morning. Max Duggan comes from the state of Iowa, and the Iowa Hawkeyes could really use him.
Yeah,
I know
heartbreak.
Does it hurt you every week?
It started. We would even take Chandler Morris. We don't need the Dugan. They could give us either one of them, and then we'd take any
or whoever their third string is. You could probably take them. And my man CJ Donaldson's back for West Virginia this week, and I think that's going to make a big difference for them. Again, everything you point to, West Virginia is not a good football team, and they're hard to figure out. TCU should win, but this is a matchup that just doesn't bode well for TCU, at least in recent years. You get Donaldson back, a big running back who's just a tight end who converted to running back. I just think this is the spot for them to have a letdown game. So we're gonna disagree on this one.
We're gonna disagree, but I'm checking. I like the point you made on Donaldson. I'm checking the see if we got prop lines up for the TCU West Virginia game, because I remember a couple games back, I forgot which one it was. It was one of the ones where Donaldson missed, one of the first ones. And the books had not baked that into their line on Mathis. And so the Mathis line was like half of what it should have been. It was one of the easiest prop bets I've won all year. We got to check the books and see if with Tony Mathis being out for this game, and I believe West Virginia's third string running back, I hope I'm not making this up, but I thought he was compromised too. So it's the opposite scenario now, where it's like Donaldson's there. They don't have anybody else to play today. So
7.5 yards is his rushing total over under.
I'm going over on that. That's Thor's first prop for the day.
You want to get him over a touchdown too. It's 0.05, of course, is the line on DraftKings for most of the touchdown things, but minus 130 is not horrible. He's probably going to get in the end zone too. So that's an interesting one.
I think Donaldson's going to break off one explosive run at least in this game, one explosive touchdown run. I
beast.
think we're getting a couple home runs out of him. That's the TCU's run defense is sort of the opposite of what I was talking about with the pass defense, where they do give up the rushing explosion, and that's one thing that West Virginia is awesome at generating. In large, first of all, you have the splits, but also Donaldson just naturally is an explosive back. That was the most stunning thing about me watching him at the start of this season was like, this kid converted for a tight end, but he's their most explosive running back.
Me too,
that
man.
kid's super talented.
That first game, I mean, obviously the backyard brawl. I'm looking at this kid, and I obviously scouted him in high school, and I'm like, what the heck is he doing at running back and killing it? But, man, he's a special talent, no doubt. We had him as tight end, and as a 3-star tight end. We did not project a 6'2", 215-pound running back coming downhill at you.
Yeah, and again, that explosive. I mean, that kid can absolutely move. So they found one, and good on Neil Brown. He had to find something.
From Miami, though. He's not from Iowa, so he doesn't hurt you as much as.
Doesn't hurt me personally, absolutely. Speaking of, we'll get to an Iowa team here in a second, but just wanted to remind everyone that's in the room right now. Ask Mike and I any gambling questions that you have about the card. After this game, we're going to get to audience questions for the first time, so get those in if you have any questions. Mike, the last noon Eastern game that we're going to talk about. Again, going to Iowa. We're going to Ames for this one. Oklahoma is traveling to Iowa State. We got a live line of Oklahoma minus 1.5 points in this game with a total of 57.5. Who do you like in this one?
So everything, again, this is my old 10,000-foot view of gambling before I started really diving into the numbers, would say Oklahoma. I mean, come on, listen, they're not a good football team, but they could put up points, and Iowa State doesn't have a great offense. What's the weakness of Oklahoma is defense, but I don't really trust the Iowa State offense to exploit that as well. And then I dug into the numbers a bit, and they're 2-5 in their last 7 against the spread. They're 1-5 in their last 7, last 6 overall. No, 2-5 in the last 7 meetings against Iowa State. The Sooners are, and 1-5, 4-1 in their last 6 on the road. Every number, 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games on grass. I mean, every number that we looked at came up in the favor of Iowa State. So I switched my pick. I believe I did it in the spreadsheet as well. I'm going with Iowa State here. I think they're going to win the football game.
Agreed. I'm with you on that. I'm taking Iowa State. Iowa State has lost 4 straight games, so it's not a surprise the market has installed them as a home underdog here, especially when you've seen Oklahoma the last time out. They got back on track. They beat Kansas by 10, and then they're coming in off a bye. So, that stuff explains why the line is where it is. But this Iowa State team, it's a super duper tough team that plays every team close and doesn't get run off the field. And they're going up against this Oklahoma team that we know is soft. It's been soft all year, and the defensive breakdowns have just compounded and everything like that. I feel like it's a bad matchup for Oklahoma, even though they do come in fresher. Iowa State's played a top 20 strength of schedule this year, but they have not yet lost by more than 7 points. And Mike, as you know, we talked about this, I think a couple weeks ago when it was Iowa State, Texas. Matt Campbell doesn't get blown out. It's not just the sort of ethos of this team. He doesn't going back, his entire tenure there. Biggest loss since year 2 was 17 to Louisiana when it was a fluky game where Louisiana had multiple special teams touchdowns. But outside of that, everything very close. And again, I think Iowa State is equipped here to be able to hold down Oklahoma, certain things they want to do on offense to keep that game close. Specifically, the addressing of the run game against Eric Gray. I think this could be a difficult game for Eric Gray. And also taking away the explosive passing plays of Oklahoma. Iowa State's defense ranks number 3 in ISO PPP, which is like a per play value metric of, essentially taking away explosive plays. They're going to be able to do that on Oklahoma. So is Dylan Gabriel and the Oklahoma offense, will they have the discipline to just try to beat Iowa State underneath? That's where the yardage is going to come if they're willing to take it the whole time. But Oklahoma, and in that system in general, and Gabriel as well, they love to hunt downfield. Sometimes Gabriel's a little bit too aggressive for his own good, puts the ball up for grabs. Iowa State's going to flip the field on him if he gets too aggressive with that. So we'll see on that. I also think on the other side, the short passing game is going to be there for Iowa State. That's not something that Oklahoma is good at defending. And in this case, Oklahoma has to defend a star. Xavier Hutchinson is an absolute stud, and Iowa State doesn't love to take the chances downfield that Oklahoma does. What they vastly prefer is that short passing game. Well, Oklahoma on the perimeter is one of the worst tackling teams in the Power 5. Their tackling rate stinks. Their secondary tackling rate stinks. They're going to have their hands full with Hutchinson all game. The props I want in this game, it's the over on completions for both the quarterbacks, because I think there's going to be just a ton of short completions throughout the game. I want the over on the receptions for the leading receivers on both sides, especially for Hutchinson. I think the running games could be held down a little bit more, but overall on the side, I'm taking Iowa State. Again, I just feel like this is a bad matchup for Oklahoma, the way Iowa State likes to play football. So I'm going to go with them. Yeah,
I got a different prop angle here, but DraftKings is too smart for me because they wouldn't put up over/under rushing yards for Jarrell Brock because I wanted to hammer it. Didn't matter what number it was. Oklahoma has the worst rushing defense in the country in the Power 5, except for one team, and that one team is the inept, horrible Colorado Buffaloes. This is a really, really bad rushing defense. As you mentioned about the tackling on the perimeter, you get any place near the secondary in your run game, and you're busting off 5, 6, 7 extra yards. They just can't tackle anybody. But Brock isn't a prop because I was going to hammer the heck out of that. So I honestly think it's going to be more the running game of Iowa State that wins this football game for them. I think they're going to just hammer Oklahoma, who can't stop anybody in the run whatsoever.
Yeah, and either way, we're on the same side. So go Cyclones today.
Go Cyclones.
Mike and I agree on that one. We want to before we get to the questions, want to thank our title sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. If you want a free $50 bet today, click the link below, sign up for a new account, deposit $5 or more, but $5 will get it, and use the promo code CFB Pros when you sign up. Appreciate you guys supporting our sponsor, and check that offer out today. It's a good one. We're going to get to audience questions here. Let's see if we got any. Okay. Tyler Fornes, our buddy Tyler Fornes, with the first question of today. Will Dino Babers give Sean Tucker more than 5 carries today, Mike? Against Notre Dame?
First of all, I mean, it's really hard to fathom that you would play a team against, a Clemson team, and your star All-American running back would get 5 carries, and he averaged 10.8 yards on those 5 carries. They used him in the passing game, but I just don't understand offensive coordinators sometimes. So what's going to happen is they're going to look at this, they're going to go back at these numbers, and they're going to see that this is, exponentially ridiculous for him to even get anything less than 20 carries, but 5, and they're going to hammer Tucker. So yeah, he's going to get more than 5 carries. I think what's going to happen is Babers is going to look at this, and he probably did it on Monday, and he's going to have a little bit of a meeting, maybe even on Sunday, and say, what were we thinking? I know he's involved in the offense, but Sean Tucker is going to get over 20 carries in this game.
The last time you told us about like a player meeting, was going to be frustrated. Butte, you gave us the over Butte. Butte went way over that game. Yeah. So I like I like those series of like
the frustration prop, man.
Like the week after. Yeah, I like that. Question from Mike Huseman, our buddy of the show. Mike asks, TCU goes to almost having West Virginia at -7.5. What do you guys think of that one? We hit on that one. Mike and I are both on TCU, right, Mike? Or no, you switched to West Virginia.
I'm on West Virginia, and if you give me that hook, I'm looking for that hook. So I haven't placed my bet yet.
Yeah.
But if I get that 7.5, man, I'm going to mash West Virginia, and we're going to see. It's still at 7. I don't think it's going to get to that hook, but if it gives me that hook, I'm taking West Virginia even like a live bet.
Yeah, no, my side, it's just a lean because even though I do prefer TCU, you recognize the circumstantial luck they've gotten with opposing quarterback injuries, and it's also a bad spot for them. They're going into this hornet's nest against a team that's more rested than them. So I do prefer TCU anyway because I think West Virginia stinks. Mike asks another one. This one we're not going to talk about today. So this is a good one. He asks, Miami travels to Virginia at -3. Your guys' thoughts on that one. This is Mike, you want to jump into this one, or you want me to go first?
No, you go ahead, because I'm disgusted with what I see from Miami and Virginia so far this season. So you go ahead.
Yeah, you had a more visceral reaction on this one than when Mike in the past has asked about like Hawaii, New Mexico State. Like this one incited your gag reflex.
I'm appalled at what I see.
I looked into this game quite closely. Virginia last week was good to me when they beat Georgia Tech. They held serve in that game. So I had to investigate this game, especially knowing how beat up Miami is. That last week they had 8 or 9 starters that were either out of that game, ruled out beforehand, or injured during the game. I think 3 offensive line starters. I believe they're getting 1 or 2 back for this game, though. But health status on the Miami side is the thing to investigate. Tyler Van Dyke, earlier in the week, it looked like he wasn't going to play. I haven't seen an official status update on him today, but based on what I saw from Jake Garcia when he went in for Van Dyke in the Duke game, it's really hard for me to trust him on the road here if it's going to be indeed his first start. Miami turned the ball over 8 times in that game. It was the most like we'd seen in a Power 5 game in like 15 years. So that stuff is the concerning stuff, even though you certainly concede that Miami is the better team. A part of me wanted to lean towards, trust Virginia again. You're getting them at home, this beaten up team. Miami's about to quit. But then again, Virginia, by far their worst thing is their offensive line, by far and away. And you're afraid of playing on Virginia whenever they're playing against teams that have good defensive fronts. It's why I trusted Virginia against Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech's front doesn't generate any pressure or any havoc, right? Whereas in this game, Miami's best thing is their defensive line. It's the one thing that has showed up game in and game out. Miami's defensive line is going to dominate Georgia's offensive line. Some of the other factors in the game they prefer Virginia on the other side of it, but because of that one pronounced mismatch, I can't get there on either side on that one. So that's a pass for me. Do you have any thoughts, Mike?
I'm still disgusted.
Okay, still disgusted.
I would take Miami. I just don't like what I see from this UVA offense. They've got a lot of weapons, but they just can't put it together. There's a lot of regression I've seen from multiple players there. I know Miami's not good. I know they just got blown up by Duke. Cristobal had a come-to-Jesus meeting sort of with the team itself. You're going to see a better effort this week, and I think Miami wins this one by a touchdown. I just can't fathom them losing again, but I don't know. They're not good. I get that. And by the way, they just got a huge recruiting upset last week. Cormani McLean, 5-star, was locked for Florida, and this is what Cristobal can do. Miami, stunning decision. And I think, honestly, I know recruiting doesn't really affect the team, but it affects the momentum in the building. And I think Miami's on a little bit of a high here. So take Miami from the recruiting angle.
I saw a picture. Was Norvell giving that kid a birthday cake or something? There was someone was making fun of him about. I don't know what went on there. Anyway, next question. What's that?
I'm not touching that.
Not touching that. BJ Laterno says, "What is your record the last couple of weeks, Thor? I feel like you are on, Cash, East Carolina, and Southern Miss. Thank you, appreciate it, BJ. I was 3 weeks ago. I had my best week. I went 10-3 against the spread. I think the next week was 7-3. So those 2 weeks I was super duper hot. Last weekend in my column, I went 5-5 against the spread. We toss in like the props and the early bets in the week. Certainly was a winning week for me, but in the column with the late week numbers, you love to go over 500 in there. And because of a couple ones went the other way, 5-5, but like over the last 3 weeks, we've been running pretty hot overall. So appreciate that. Tyler Fornes asks, is 22.5 too much to cover for Georgia against Florida? We'll get to that one in a second. Tyler, appreciate it. Yep. DC asks, what's the lock for today? DC, we're going to get back to that one because we're not done talking through the whole card. We can. I'll bring up our favorite bets later in the episode.
And my buddy came up with a great slogan for you. It's called Thor's Hammer. So that's going to be your lock of the week. Is the Thor's Hammer? That's
awesome. At the end of it, we'll do our hammer. Our favorite.
You
bet
hit that hammer and you say this is the lock of the week, and the lightning hits the sky, and it's fun.
Okay, I'm gonna get to the question about BC and UConn at our next question break. So thanks for that, Brock. Well, we're gonna get to that in about 20 minutes. Mike, getting back, and anyone else out there, if you have any questions in the meantime, ask them, and we'll get back to questions here in a second. But we're gonna jump into the afternoon slate. Before we do, Mike, Florida and Georgia, are we still allowed to call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, or is that non grata?
Because there's addiction issues on all sides, and you can't say that in this world. We're not
allowed to say that anymore. So it's the world's largest fun outside Kool-Aid sipping party in Jacksonville. We got the line this morning jumped up. It had gotten down to like 22 and a half. It jumped up this morning to Georgia by 23 and a half. So it'll be interesting to see now that it's sort of threatening that 24 threshold. Is it going to get there? We'll find out. Total on this game of 56 and a half. Mike, what side do you like in this one?
Georgia. I don't believe at all in Florida. I don't believe Anthony Richardson is unfortunately ever going to be any good. They are just on this against the spread cold streak. They're 3-11 in their last 14 games against the spread, 1-7 in their last 8 games against an opponent in the SEC, 1-5 the last 5 games following a straight up loss, 1-5 versus a team with a winning record. On and on it goes, and this line is high. You know, you wouldn't think in the Kool-Aid sipping party you would see a line like this. But Florida can't cover. Florida can't match up well against this team. And Georgia's going to want to put their foot on their throat here. Georgia's hearing a whole lot about Tennessee. Georgia's hearing a whole lot about this, that, and the other. I think this is a game. They haven't played anybody yet. You know, Oregon was a good game in the beginning of the season, but we didn't know how good Oregon was going to be at the time. This is a statement game for Georgia. They are going to be able to do whatever they want against this Florida defense. And they're going to absolutely destroy them.
Yeah, this is a very, very bad matchup for Florida. Georgia matched up really well against them, mostly because Florida cannot categorically defend the run. Their run defense is horrible. So Georgia's going to, they're not going to be causing Georgia to punt at all in this game. It's just going to be first down when Georgia has the ball. You're going to see that the whole time. The only way that Florida, in my opinion, can keep this one close, it's if we get Utah game Anthony Richardson. Is he going to put that Superman cape on again?
Right.
Because if he doesn't, how are they going to stay close with a Georgia team that, again, I don't know if they're going to be forced to punt even once against this Florida run defense that cannot stop the run. And that's also going to facilitate some opportunities for Stetson Bennett once they start lulling Florida forward, because Florida's going to have to start putting more guys in the box or they're going to get stampeded this entire game. But like, because you mentioned how inflated the line is, especially now, I'm going to stay away from the side just because how many points it is. I'm going to lean the over on this one. My system set a total in this game of 60.5. The total also came up. Like I think it was 54.5, like not long ago, maybe even yesterday. Come up to 56.5 now. I agree with the money coming in on the over. That would be my lean. Again, I think Georgia is going to score a whole lot of points in this game, and it's going to force the Superman show out of Richardson. And if he's not up to that, he's going to be turning the ball over a bunch, which is going to make it even worse.
Yeah, it's going to snowball. It's one of those games where once you get down 14, you're down 28 that fast. There is an interesting prop here, too. 60.5 is the over for Brock Bowers receiving yards, which seems very low to me. And it's a plus 100, too, which is rare. Like I said, most of these are minus 110, minus 120. So for Brock Bowers to be at a low number at 60.5 at a plus 100, I would take that as well, because I think he's going to have a big game.
Love it. Moving to our next 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Oklahoma State traveling to Manhattan, the Little Apple, to play Kansas State. Kansas State is a 1.5-point favorite now live in the market. Oklahoma State was favored a little bit earlier this week, but now Kansas State is, and a 56.5 is the total we have on this game. Mike, what's your angle?
I like both these teams. As you know, I've been talking about how talented Kansas State is, and then they let me down last week by just, giving up an unfathomable lead. And again, the injuries obviously played into that, and I'm big on Oklahoma State too. And then they had TCU, by the throat, and they let them off the hook too. So this is kind of a rebound game. I like Kansas State in this game. I'm not really sure what level I like it. It's not really like oh my God, bet everything you have on Kansas State, but I like their matchup. Anthony Martinez is a bit iffy, and that's going to change a lot of this. And I think that's where you see some line fluctuation. But give me Kansas State here. I think they're going to cover at the very least and probably win the game outright.
Yeah, I just looked up the reports like right now about Adrian Martinez's status. They're still calling him a game time decision. What I've heard is that he's not going to be playing today. So, take that for what it's worth. We'll find out. The good news for Kansas State, if there is any, and, on that front, is that Will Howard is 1,000% going to be active. So you're probably going to get Will Howard in this game. We'll see if Martinez has, like a miracle before, like a couple weeks ago, I was told Tanner Morgan wasn't going to play against Penn State, barring a late week miracle. So we'll see. We'll see if Adrian Martinez woke up with a miracle today. But barring that, you're going to get Will Howard. Will Howard did look way better than we had seen him in recent past in the last game when he came on in relief in the TCU game, that was more like the Will Howard we were expecting when he came out of high school, when people were like, oh, he's going to challenge Skylar Thompson right out of the gate to play. And we did see him, his first couple of years. He just didn't play very well. And then he became sort of the afterthought. Then Skylar leaves. And then Kleiman goes out and gets Adrian Martinez. So it's like, well, maybe Will Howard's just a bust. But again, last game, he looked like the Will Howard we were promised. If we get Will Howard in this game, I think he's going to be able to do more against that Oklahoma State defense, maybe than people think, because that defense is the thing that's down on that team. They don't got Jim Knowles anymore. They don't got Malcolm Rodriguez running around. They lost a whole bunch of guys over the offseason, in addition to Knowles, of course.
Defense is horrible. It's just
not good. And it was awesome last year, right? Like, and Oklahoma State has made some gains on offense. Credit to Spencer Sanders, for instance, where the tide has risen a little bit there, even though they had lost Jalen Warren, even though they've had wide receiver injuries this year. But yeah, to Mike's point, the defense is way, way down. Kansas State is also, I'm hearing, going to have the services of Deuce Vaughn in this game, full go after Deuce Vaughn was knocked out in the last one. This was a very important game to get the information on the injuries, because this time around, whereas last week all we were talking about was Spencer Sanders' status going into the Texas game, this game was all about all the Kansas State guys who had gotten injured in the TCU one. Knowing I'm at least going to get Howard and knowing that Deuce Vaughn is going to play, and it looks like a couple of those defenders Kansas State got knocked out as well, are going to play in this game. They might lose one of them who's questionable, the linebacker, but the rest of them looks like we have decent status reports. For all those reasons, I got to take Kansas State here. Oklahoma State, they're sort of at the end of a marathon. Some of these games that they've been playing, the back and forth, the track meets and everything like that, having to come from behind, getting beaten from behind, all this different stuff. Now you got to go to the Little Apple. It's just a difficult place to play.
Yeah, they don't match up well against Kansas State to start with. They don't play well. I mean, they're 1-4 in their last 5 and 3-8 in their last 11 against Kansas State. They don't play well against Kansas State, especially at Kansas State. And didn't this line start off with Kansas State getting 1.5?
It did. But a part of that was the market not knowing what the status of the Kansas State injuries were. So I think we got some good news during the week, and that's why it toggled back.
But also, how often do you see a line toggle that much when you also know that the starting quarterback's going to be out? That's a weird one to me. Like, for that to flip a full 3 points the other way, somebody knows something. And this is not a good matchup for Oklahoma State. So I think Kansas State by a field goal.
Agreed. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see as far as the over-under this one goes, because it's two teams that play opposite in terms of the tempo. So what team will be able to dictate that?
We always talk about how bad Arkansas's pass defense. Oklahoma State's pass defense is worse. I think there's only a couple of defenses in the country that are worse than them, and we're going to get to one of them when we get to Tennessee. But this is a phenomenally bad pass defense. I mean, they give up over 300 yards a game, and they give up a 300-yard passer to everybody. So I think Oklahoma State's going to be – you mentioned Will Howard, not a super ballyhooed recruit to me, but a guy that looked good early in his career out of practice and all that stuff. I think he could have a big game. He's not on any of the props, because I think there's a game time decision with Anthony Martinez. But if he shows up in the props, he might want to hit his over for passing yards too, because it could be low. Like, it could be 250, and he'll probably hit up above that.
Agreed. Especially, plays as well as he did last week. One more game for the afternoon slate, and then we'll get back into audience questions. So please ask any if you're out there, if you have any questions on what you're going to bet today. Mike, the last one at the 3:30 kickoffs that we're going to talk about today, we got an interesting one in the AAC. Cincinnati traveling to UCF, live in the market. This is another game where the road team was favored earlier in the week, and now it's switched to the other side. UCF is favored by 1.5 in the bounce house. We got a total on this game of 55.5. What angle do you have on this game, Mike?
So initially I thought Cincinnati, just looking at these two teams and how up and down UCF's been and how consistently, Cincinnati's been playing. And also I think the coaching edge goes to Fickle. But then I thought of the bounce house. Then I thought of the atmosphere. Then I looked at the numbers. The home team covers the spread in this game pretty much every year. The favorite covers the spread in this game pretty much every year. And Cincinnati's 2-4 against the spread in their last 6 games against UCF. This is a good matchup for UCF. On paper, I think it is. Now, again, most people are taking Cincinnati. I think probably it's 70% of the bets are that way. So I got UCF against what everybody thinks in the bounce house. I think that place is going to go crazy, and they're going to pull out the victory. It's not an upset because they're favored, but I think they're going to win, 3 to 7 points.
Yeah, UCF is way better at home than they are on the road. So in terms of that, it matches up for them. I don't think this is the best matchup for Cincinnati, like you were sort of mentioning. Last week I was on ECU when they, we were talking about this before, when they were playing UCF. ECU was a great matchup for UCF because of their awesome run defense. This one maybe not quite as much, but Cincinnati does have the good run defense. They do give up explosive runs, though, in a way that ECU didn't. But in terms of success rate, Cincinnati's run defense ranks number 10. They're also number 6 against the pass, although John Reese Plumlee, you don't see much success out of their passing game, at least as far as that goes. I don't think this is the best spot for Cincinnati. I trust Cincinnati so much more than I trust UCF that I have to lean that way. It's not an official play for me, certainly. But I do trust this Cincinnati team. I don't think the market does at all. I think the market trusts UCF more than Cincinnati. I don't trust UCF, the team I haven't trusted all season. Because of the matchup aspect of it, I can't get all the way to bet it, but I would lean
trustworthy, bro. You're right. They're not trustworthy.
Yeah.
It's just like, which team are you going to get here? Whereas Cincinnati's been steady, but to your point, at home, they're a different football team. Plumlee's a different quarterback at home. And how dare you slander Plumlee? Did you watch the Temple game? Did you see?
Unfortunately, I did, because I bet on Temple plus the points.
So did I.
That one didn't work out well for me.
I took Temple plus the points too, and I was like, okay, I got this, man. I mean, Plumlee's, and then he goes 18 to 22, 373 yards, and it was just 70-13. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a dumb bet. And that was kind of where I said, okay, I'm not going to bet against UCF this year at home anymore. So that's what I'm thinking here. At home, if this was at Cincinnati, it'd be a different story. But that bounce house, UCF. So we disagree on this one, right? You got Cincinnati?
Yeah, I'm going to go Cincinnati. We got a disagreement. And, yeah, I mean, UCF is going to be ticked off after what happened against ECU. But we'll see how locked in they are. Because Cincy really doesn't have down performances. So I guess we'll find out. Mike, we'll get to our questions here in a second. If anyone has any, ask them quick, because we're going to jump into those. But wanted to talk to you guys about our offer again really quick. Thank you to our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook. Betting Pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you guys an awesome offer this season. New customers can get a $50 free bet when making their first-time deposit. To get in on the action, just create your new DraftKings Sportsbook account using the promo code CFBPros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and then use your $50 free bet on any college football action. Again, to claim this offer, go to the link in our video description or pinned in the live chat and sign up to get started. Mike, let's get back to some more questions. I teased it before. Brock, sorry we put you on hold for a little bit. We're going to get to your question now. This comes from Brock Marshallek. I hope I'm pronouncing the last name right. Mike, Mike, I'm going to let you start out on this one because he's asking about your UConn Huskies, your local team.
No, my Boston College Eagles. I'm not a UConn fan at all. I live here. Never been a UConn fan. Randy Edsall, remember?
Oh, that is right. But we're gonna call this the Farrell Bowl then, if that's okay.
I can't even bet it because it's a Connecticut team. I told you, I don't know why. There's rules, but you got to drive over the border maybe if you like it. Do you like a side in this game? BC minus 6 or 7. I mean, UConn stinks. BC's been playing down. Their offensive line is atrocious, but they're just the more talented team. 7.5 is low. I mean, even a 2-5 BC team should be favored at least by 2 touchdowns against UConn. For some reason, this line's so low. I don't understand it. I would mash BC on this as hard as possible. They should win this game by 20.
Feels like some heavy hitters in the market like UConn. That line being dragged, that is a very curious line, isn't it, Mike?
Maybe they think it's basketball, but this football team is – and again, they've won some games this year, and Jim Mora is a nice – human being as opposed to Randy Edsall, who's not. So good on UConn for actually winning football games, but no. I mean, when you look at these rosters, even with BC's offensive line being young and having a lot of injuries and all that stuff, BC's just going to be able to overpower them eventually. And I don't understand why this line's so low. And maybe it's just me knowing this rivalry too well, but there's no way this should be a close football game.
Yeah, my line on this game is Boston College minus 9.6. Very curious though, that line keeps dropping down. Earlier in the week when it was like a 10 or a little bit above, I was showing the value on UConn. But then again, like the market being this much behind UConn, it's not like I think that value evaporated because the market's giving you indication that there's value on one side. I guess I would lean UConn if I had to bet this game. I'm not going to because I feel like
let's you and I bet it because I can't bet it online. So let's bet like something big, like big. I'll take
just hammer. Oh, you and me. Okay. We off air, we might have to talk about a bet in that one. But the one thing I'll say matchup specific wise is, Mike, as you know, Boston College, they want to get those deep shots to Zay Flowers because the rest of their offense stinks. Their offensive line is a travesty. And not all their fault. Like they've only had Boston College only had one guy this season on their offensive line, a projected starter from over the summer who is still in the spot that he started at and healthy, right? Like the other guys are either benched, injured, whatever the case was. The injury started over this summer, but Boston College is starting two different converted defensive linemen on their offensive line. That's how bad things are. They're starting a former guard at tackle. They have a different kid who's a preferred walk-on who's now starting because all these different injuries. So it's difficult for them there. The way they can generate offense is by hitting Zay Flowers downfield or letting him run after the catch. That's like the one stud on that team. The interesting thing, though, UConn's defense, of course, it's no great shakes. One thing they're really good at is taking away passing explosion, and that's the best thing that Boston College does. So Boston College ranks number 27th in passing explosion, SP+. The UConn defense, they rank like sub 90 in almost every single advanced category, but number 22 in taking away passing explosion. So they might be able to address Zay Flowers a little bit better than people think heading in. And because of what the market's telling me in this one, I would have to lean UConn. Let's see. Our next question comes from Tyler Fornes asking, so Smith and Jigba he's saying with Smith and Jigba out, who do you like? Okay, so we have that official word today.
It just came out. Yep.
Okay, so with Smith and Jigba out, who do you like more for receiving yards, Mike? Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka? I'm going to look it up on the books and see the numbers we got. So do you have any thoughts on that?
On DraftKings, Egbuka is 78.5 is his over-under line for receiving yards, and Harrison's 87.5. But the difference is Harrison's 87.5 with a plus 110 on DraftKings. So I would hit that one. You're getting a better bang for your buck. I think he probably could have a 150-yard game. I know Penn State's good against the pass, or at least, they've got Joey Porter, and he's going to be all over Marvin Harrison Jr. But eventually the pass game is probably going to wear them down. And C.J. Stroud is a lock-on quarterback, and we've seen that, and he still hasn't really changed. His field vision isn't great. He'll go first read, second read, and then that's it. And, I think Harrison Jr. is going to be the first read, and I think he's going to throw to him probably 10 times and get over that 87.5.
Mike, give me the numbers you're seeing again, because I'm not seeing the –
On DraftKings, Egbuka is 78.5, his over-under yardage. And Marvin Harrison's 87.5.
Okay. So I mentioned this before. I'm shading towards the unders on the passing props on the Ohio State side against this really good Penn State pass defense. I'm going to go under on the Harrison one for sure. Mike, you said it was
87.5. Unders minus 140. And overs plus 110. So you're with everybody else. The thought process is he's going to go under that 87.5.
I just think it's too high. You look at their last four games. Harrison had 45 receiving yards against Wisconsin, 3 catches for 45, 3 catches for 18 against Rutgers. The one where he would have gone over 7 catches for 131s and 3 tutties against Michigan State a couple weeks ago. Last week against Iowa, 7 for 62 and 1 touchdown. Realize the game script, went the way it did in some of those games, but Ohio State's favored by more than 2 touchdowns in this game as well. If in terms of looking at it like that, Egbuka has been a little bit more consistent, so it's sort of surprising that his number is lower. But I suppose he doesn't have as big of a name. But like Egbuka, you look through his entire game log this year: 90 receiving yards, 118, 116, 118, 70, 143, and 80. He doesn't really have the dud games. So, again, I'm definitely going under on Harrison. Egbuka, he might be the one where I consider the over but I'm just not super confident in Ohio State's passing game today when they can just attack that Penn State run defense with Henderson. That's the guy I'm going over on.
Egbuka was a 5-star. Smith and Jigba was a 5-star. Marvin Harrison was a 4-star. But then he got to Ohio State, and he was much bigger than advertised. And he's had this hype since he arrived there, and he hasn't hit it yet. Egbuka is the better receiver. So to your point, his number's lower. Maybe that's the one you should mash. But I think what it is everybody's expecting this big breakout game from Marvin Harrison eventually. And he's got 10 TDs, and he is a target. Like Stroud targets him a little bit more, it seems, consistently. He just doesn't make as many plays as Egbuka. So it's interesting. But I'm going to go opposite of you. I'm going to say Marvin Harrison at plus. I'm going to say he goes over the 87.5.
Oh, okay. We got another disagreement. We're going to have lots of that today.
Lots of disagreement. Well, people love disagreement, right?
Love it. Next question for Mike Huseman. He asked, Marshall hosting Coastal Carolina. Do you guys have a side in this game? The live line in this one is we got 2.5, Mike. My line in this game is Marshall minus 4.8. That would be the side I would be leaning towards, the Marshall side. I trust Marshall's defense. It's unfortunate that I don't trust their passing game as much because Coastal Carolina's pass defense is a travesty, but anybody could throw on them. I do think Marshall's going to be able to run on Coastal, but Coastal's pass defense is so bad. But I would be laying the short amount of points with Marshall's my take, Mike.
I would take the over. The over is 54. I would take the over. I think that's a low number.
Okay. And Mike's going over. And we got any other questions? Let's see. Tyler Fornes says, guys, I'm riding Oklahoma -1. Matt Campbell is 5 and 14 in games where the spread is within 3.5 points. Looks like we fight again. Great. I'm on Iowa State. We'll see how it goes. Moving to the next slate of games, the evening ones, Mike. Our next one, we got Tennessee and Kentucky with our next one.
Yeah.
Kentucky. Okay, Kentucky traveling. I finally pulled up my right tab. Kentucky traveling to Tennessee. Tennessee, are they still favored by 11.5? Because that one had come down a little bit.
No, it's 11 on DraftKings, 11.5.
Okay, so Tennessee favored by 11.5. Total on this game is 61.5. What side do you like in this one, Mike?
I got two here. I do like Tennessee, even though their weakness at Tennessee's defense is their pass defense, and Kentucky's more of a run-oriented football team. So this isn't a great matchup for Kentucky, when it comes to strength of offense versus weakness of defense. That being said, I do have a prop of Will Levis. His number to me is a little bit low. It's 243.5 passing yards. I've got the over there. And to me, the reason is Tennessee gives up 330 yards passing a game. And they struggle mightily because teams are always behind. So they're throwing the ball more. So I think Levis is going to have more than 24 passes. When he slings the ball 25 times or more, he's over that number every time. So I do like Levis over, but I like Tennessee to cover this game. This is a trap game. I know you're going to say that, right? Georgia's looming, but this is at home. They're wearing their blackout uniforms. Have you seen those?
I have.
Oh my God! I mean, the uniforms themselves are worth 5 points. So take Tennessee. I just like the matchup for Tennessee here when it comes to their weaknesses on defense versus Kentucky, what they like to do. I think they can stop the run, not stop it, but at least limit the run, and then let Kentucky try to get back in the game down 14 with their passing game and still win this game by 14 to 20 points.
So I love the angle on Will Levis. You're totally right. Tennessee has an awesome run defense, but their pass defense stinks. It's just so obvious to the opponents that are about to play them, the way that you attack that team. The last 4 games, in fact, the opposing quarterback has gone over 300 yards passing against Tennessee. One of those guys was an FCS quarterback when they played, was it Tennessee Tech or whatever? And
Tennessee Martin.
Tennessee Martin. I'm so sorry, Tennessee Martin. And the two of those games, the opposing quarterback went over 400 passing yards.
Right.
Bryce Young makes more sense, but they gave it up to Anthony Richardson too. I mean, everybody eats Tennessee's lunch through the air, and I think that not only is that the way that I think Kentucky knows that they have to attack. I think they're going to lean into that. This is a prime draft showcase opportunity for Will Levis, and a perfect one, right? You're going up, you're going on the road facing this undefeated team, and the context of how bad Tennessee's pass defenses after the fact, when like draft guys are watching this after the fact, I don't think that's going to get baked in as much. It's just going to be like, oh, Will Levis went in and played undefeated Tennessee and ripped them up for 450 yards and 8 touchdowns or whatever. Like, I think he's going nuts. I'm taking the over on all of Levis's props for sure. You might look under on Rodriguez because, again, I think they're going to shift away from that and towards the passing game. So we'll definitely see on that. Another thing to watch out for, Tennessee has only averaged 1.4 punts per game leading up into this game. Kentucky's the best defense they will have faced. And Kentucky, one of the most dangerous things about Tennessee, it's not only that they're top 10 in EPA per run, they're also top 10 in EPA per pass. And the guy calling the plays is one of the most creative guys in the country at calling them and isolating matchup problems on the other side. Like, oh, that guy's a weakness, we're going to pick on him, etc. We saw that with Jalen Hyatt, what he did to Alabama, because they obviously had isolated something. So it makes it so difficult. But he, in this game, Heupel has a worthy adversary on the other side in Mark Stoops. Not only is, Mark Stoops himself a very good defensive play caller, but Kentucky can defend both the pass and the run. So they can be multiple in the same way. I think they're going to force Tennessee to punt more than 1.4 times, certainly. And if they can get, 4 punts out of them, it's going to really improve their chances to win. Especially when that Levis is going to go buck wild here or of keeping it close. I'm going to take certainly the points with Kentucky. I do think this is a good spot for Kentucky. I'm going to take the points with them. First time all season, Levis and Chris Rodriguez have been healthy and active in the same game. Remember, Chris Rodriguez was suspended in September. Will Levis suffered that turf toe injury right after. They finally got those guys healthy. Love their defense. Kentucky comes in off of a bye. I'm going to take the points with Kentucky, and I would not be stunned if they knock off Tennessee today, Mike. I'm not going to go all the way and call for it, but wouldn't be surprised. I think they match up okay.
You know how Tennessee struggles against Alabama? Kentucky struggles against Tennessee. They're 3-12 in their last 15 meetings against Tennessee against the spread. It just doesn't bode well for them. So I'm going to disagree with you here. I'm going to take Tennessee to cover that line. Dark mode uniforms are going to rock.
The dark mode uniforms are going to get their lights shut out by Kentucky. We'll see. Moving to the next game now, 7:30 Eastern kickoff this evening. Ole Miss traveling to Texas A&M. Texas A&M Ole Miss is favored by 1.5. And we have a total on this game of 55.5, but it's come down the Ole Miss side. Who do you like in this game, Mike? Do you have an angle?
I like Ole Miss. I mean, I think things are falling apart quite quickly in College Station. I don't think this team is playing for Jimbo anymore. We saw the suspensions. We talk about the lack of quarterback development, the offensive woes. He called Kiffin a clown in the offseason, and he doubled down on the clown comment. I think Lane Kiffin's going to want to run this one up a bit. Now, the problem is he's got Jackson Dart as his quarterback, so it's hard to run up anything when he's so bad. But I still like Ole Miss to win this game and cover.
So I'm going to stay away from this side. There's a lot of things going on there. Like, I definitely trust Mississippi more. I'm with you on that for sure. But this is a really difficult situational spot for them. You come off the deflating loss against LSU. Now you've seen your mortality. Obviously they can't go undefeated anymore after they got pinned with that. Now you got to travel to Kyle Field, to College Station, where A&M returns home after they haven't played there for a really long time. They had the multiple road games. They had a neutral site game. They had a bye week in there. They finally get back a team that was sort of licking its wounds. Feels like a get-right spot potentially for A&M. So for all those different reasons, I'm staying away from the side. The angle I like in this game, it's the under. I went under last week when it was LSU and Mississippi, and that worked out well. I'm going back to the well on that one and going under. Mississippi does play at the fastest tempo, neutral tempo in the entire nation for sure. Texas A&M totally on the other side of that polarity, one of the slowest moving offenses in the entire nation. So that thing should neutralize and maybe even drag to A&M side if they're able to be as competitive in this game as I think that they might be. But the point I want to make is both these offenses, and this is part of the reason why I went under on LSU and Mississippi, both these offenses are going to skew so heavily towards the run. Mississippi already runs over 65% of their standard offensive snaps. It's going to be even more in this game after Lane Kiffin has seen Jackson Dart struggle so much in these SEC games. 5 interceptions in those 4 SEC games, and against the decent competition when they played Auburn, when they played Kentucky, and in the last time out against LSU, he's barely averaging over 200 yards passing and barely over 50% completions in those games. So he's really struggled when he has stepped up in competition. Certainly this game will qualify as well. So Ole Miss is going to be running a lot with Zach Evans and Judkins. Also, that way you can avoid Texas A&M's defensive strength of their secondary. Ole Miss is going to be running a lot, and then A&M, they're going to be running as much with Odchain as they can, and then dumping short passes off to Odchain is going to be their whole thing. So, and I do think they'll be able to nick Ole Miss with paper cuts a little bit, but there will be no explosion on that side, and I don't think there's going to be as much explosion on the other side, maybe as common sense would dictate with the Lane Kiffin offense because of the defensive strengths of A&M again, and the inability for Ole Miss, and I think, to be able to throw the ball effectively in this game. I'm going to go with the under. I guess if I had to bet the side, I think I would probably lean A&M just because of how beneficial this situational spot is for them. But I'm going to stay away on that one.
The unders come in the last 7 meetings of this game too. So you're on something.
Love to see that. Love to see it. Next game, we have another 7:30 Eastern kickoff. Mike, this one's going to kind of be an ugly one. Maybe we'll find out if Michigan State can put up a fight. But Michigan State traveling to Ann Arbor. They are the Wolverines are a 22.5-point favorite live with a total on this game of 55. What side do you like in this one?
So it's 22 now. It moves a lot. So I like the under, first of all, and I like Michigan State. So this is a rivalry where anything and all things happen. Some weird stuff continues to occur every year with these two teams. So you kind of throw out the records sometimes. And when you look at the recent results, my buddy Chife looked at since the year 2000, Michigan has only beaten Michigan State by 20 or more points twice. These games are close. They're usually close. Doesn't matter if Michigan State stinks. Michigan's undefeated, headed towards the playoff. I have Blake Corum as a prop going over his number. It's 115.5 because I think he can run effectively. But I also like Michigan State to cover. That's just too big a number, man. It's just too big. And if you want to parlay the under with it, I think that's a smart bet too. So give me Michigan State here.
Yeah, I agree. It's just too many points with the sort of the context that we know about the rivalry. It's just really hard to lay that many points with Michigan, even though you logically and objectively know how much better Michigan is than Michigan State. But 24 and 22 and a half or whatever just feels like a lot of points. I also don't think Michigan State is quite as bad as we've seen so far this year, not quite as bad. And the margins of that, the shades of gray of that actually matter in this one. Their offense has been doing okay this year. We'll see if they're able to run the ball at all on Michigan State on Michigan. But just because it's the rivalry spot, I'm going to take them to stay close. We'll see, though, how it plays out. The sort of the side thing of Jim Harbaugh hasn't yet beaten Mel Tucker, and he's 3-4 against Michigan State in his career. So we'll see if Harbaugh wants to pour it on late in this game. But again, with where the line is right now in the rivalry, I got to just lean Michigan State. Not an official play for me, though.
I get it. And what it comes down to is you look simply at the numbers. Michigan State is the second worst team in the Big Ten against the rush. And who's the best team, arguably in the nation, running the football is Michigan. So 2-2 equal 4 there. It's at home, so the inflated number, they're going to win. But 22, yeah, that's a high number, man. I mean, it's just like we've seen so many freaky things. So I think we're both on the same page there. But that's why the number is so big, is because Michigan State can't stop the run, and that's all Michigan does. But one or two turnovers here and there, and you've got yourself a 14-point game, and you're in the money.
Yeah, this could be a big game for J.J. McCarthy as well. I mean, everybody could pass on Michigan State. Michigan State ranks 120th in the nation in passing success rate allowed and EPA per pass allowed. So it should be a big game potentially for him through the air. We'll see if Sparty can do anything to hold down Corum. Couple stats on Corum for you guys. 6.7 yards per carry, 13 tutties, 23 runs at 10 yards or more. Kid's been a stud all season. Moving to our last game that we're going to talk about with the evening slate. And then if there's any more questions from the audience, we will hit them at the very end of the show. So get those in right now. If anyone out there has any questions on bets you're considering, props, sides, totals, the whole deal. Mike, the last one that we got on the schedule to talk about today, Baylor traveling to Texas Tech this evening. We have a line on this game of Texas Tech -2.5, total 62.5. What side do you like in this one?
I hate this game. I do like Texas Tech. I think Baylor's just so erratic to me. I really don't know what I'm going to get from them. Shapen's been playing poorly at quarterback, and there's just a lot of things aren't happening well when it comes to the continuity and the consistency we expect of a Baylor football team. And I think Texas Tech is well coached. Joey McGuire has them rolling. They got the young quarterback going now. I don't like this game. I wouldn't bet it. But if I had to, I would take Texas Tech in this one. It just I'm tempted. Let me see if the numbers changed. I don't see it. Oh, so it's still -2. Texas Tech. Yeah, Texas Tech is going to win this game probably by a field goal, but I don't like this game as far as a legitimate bet.
Yeah, my lean, I guess I'd have the opposite lean of Mike, but this lean is just ever so slight. I do have to say, because there's data on both sides that can support a play on both the sides. I do lean Baylor, though. I'll give my trepidations in a second, but the reason I would lean Baylor in this game is objectively, I think they're the superior team. For instance, let's just look at second order wins. These teams have the same record in the standings, right? But Baylor has 1.6 more second order wins than Texas Tech does. Baylor's played a bit better than their record. I'm not sure that you can say the same about Texas Tech. So I think it's sort of a tale of, in the standings, they look the same, but they're actually not. But Texas Tech is in an awesome situational spot in this game. Like really, really good. I had texted a Baylor buddy earlier this week. Mike, I'm going to read to you what he texted back, because I thought it was kind of funny. He said, I've had this game circled as an L for the entire season. We are horrible on the road under Dave. We haven't won in Lubbock in like 35 years. Granted, we played in Arlington for a while. Our secondary is horrible. We don't get pressure on the opposing quarterback. It's a blackout night game. Mahomes is getting put into their Hall of Fame. Joey McGuire knows our entire roster inside and out. A whole laundry list of bad vibes. And then he put it at a 50-50 coin flip. I think, just in terms of qualitatively and then on-field matchup, I would take the small amount of points with Baylor. But you have to acknowledge how good of a situational spot this is for Texas Tech. Not only just in the moment, but, of course, Joey McGuire, the guy you just mentioned, who's doing a great job. He knows the entire Baylor roster. That's where he came from. So it's like you have the two things on both those sides. That's why it's just a lean for me, and I couldn't get there on an official play. But I got the different lean than you, Mike. Was there any props you liked in this one, or just a side game for you?
There weren't a ton. I'm a big Baron Morton fan, but he's got
a great arm.
He does, and he's just Joey McGuire told me before this season, because you remember Tyler Shuck was supposed to be the guy, right?
Yep.
And there was some question, and there was a big quarterback battle. He's like, I got three dudes, not just a transfer coming in here. And I didn't really believe him at the time, but we saw a little bit of Morton last year, what he can do. He's not on the passing props. It's Shapen, so they don't have the Texas Tech passing props. I would take Morton if you can find him, because look at the numbers. I mean, the guy 325 yards against West Virginia, 379 yards against Oklahoma State, and Joey McGuire trusts him so much more. 45 attempts, 62 attempts. They're going to air it out when he's the guy, and he's going to just put up monster numbers. I would guess that number would be around 295. And
Mike, I got one for you.
What is it? What's the number?
274.5 for Bear Morton.
Take your mortgage and take the over. Now, if you lose,
we're going over on Morton.
I don't want to hear it. If you lose, I'm not paying your mortgage. Yeah. But I'm telling you, that's a low number. My head had 295, so that's a value.
If you lose, Farrell doesn't want to hear from you. But if you win,
you won't want to at all. If you win, I'll take some.
Yeah, you'll take some. Mike, we're gonna get back into see if we have any questions before let's see. Okay, we got a couple questions. And again, this is your guys' last chance for questions. We'll be here for another 10 minutes or so. So if you have any quick, write them into the chat. Mike, this one comes from Chilius Maximus. Great name. What do you guys think about Wake Forest? This line seems low. Is there something I'm not seeing? Mike, in the Wake Forest Louisville game, do you have any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, this isn't a good matchup for Louisville, I don't think. I think Louisville can win football games against teams that have to run the ball and don't have a great passing attack. But a team that airs it out like Wake Forest is going to be a real problem for them. I think that number is low. I would sort of take Wake Forest to win this game probably by 10. You're talking about the number 10 team in the country with a prolific offense going on the road against a Louisville team that's just Jekyll and Hyde, and that number is low. So maybe somebody knows something. But I've talked to some people this week, and I think this is a bad matchup for Louisville. So take Wake Forest.
I'm gonna stay away from the side of it. The angle I like on this game is the over, and I like it quite a bit. This is one of my official plays in my my system had the over under at 69. Multiple points high, close to a touchdown higher, at least than the number was earlier this week. This game is going to be played at ridiculous tempo. It's one of only 5 games on the entire college football card today between a top 20 adjusted tempo team, that's Wake Forest, against a top 50 adjusted tempo team, that being Louisville. And both of the offenses are going to be able to generate explosive plays throughout because they're teeing off on defenses that not only give them up, but have very specific weaknesses towards what the offense's strengths are. And I also don't know how Louisville is going to keep Wake Forest off schedule. In addition to that, the one other thing is like one of the only things you could point to in like the advanced stats to support a defense at all is Wake Forest has ancillary solid stats against overall like decent stats against the run. And so you're like, oh, maybe they can hold Louisville down. They're better against the downhill run teams than they are against the ones with the dual threat quarterbacks that can get outside of the pocket and destroy you with the scramble yards. That's what a lot of Louisville's rushing production comes from. So I actually think that Louisville sort of leans away from even that sort of matchup strength or whatever. And I know that Louisville is going to be able to throw on Wake Forest pass defense because everybody does. But also, like you were mentioning, Wake Forest, their offensive, the matchup for their offense against Louisville's defense is very advantageous for Wake Forest as well. Again, crazy tempo in this game. You're going to see lots of explosive plays, lots of opportunities for both offenses to just tee off on these bad defenses. I'm taking the over. We got a couple more questions. Tyler Fornes asked us, he said that Connor Weigman is starting. So this must have been confirmed while we've been on. Connor Weigman is going to start for A&M today. Not Haynes King. Are you excited to get to see Weigman, the 5-star freshman?
I think Jimbo's a little bit afraid that he's going to be exposed as the lack of a quarterback whisperer that he is, because there's so much pressure on Connor Weigman to be good. This is the highest ranked quarterback he's recruited since he was at Florida State. This is the kid everybody wants to see. We've seen him fail to develop Kellen Mond. We've seen him fail with Zach Calzada. Now we've seen him fail with Haynes King. I think it's about time. I think it's way late, honestly. Season. But I don't have any trust that he's going to develop because I think Jimbo might be a fraud. $100 million fraud.
I think you might be onto something there. We'll see how Weigman does today. Big spot for Weigman. I think he's got a shot to be okay. We'll see. Is it too early on his line of progression? We'll find out. Mike Lukovitz, asks us, he said, are we liking the Sean Clifford over 12.5 rushing yard prop and Bo Nix over 30? We talked about the Bo Nix rushing prop last week. This is kind of funny. Bo Nix, I guess his rushing number is 35 today against Cal on the road. Mike asks us, do either of these or do either of you have a sneaky quarterback rush total that you like? I don't know what Malik Cunningham's. I'll just start off. I don't know what Malik Cunningham's is. I'm guessing it's got to be pushed up a little bit, but I was just talking about how I think that's actually a good matchup for him. So Malik Cunningham, depending on what that number is, I would probably lean over on that just being one. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Clifford over 12.5. Bo Nix, I would go the over at 37.5. I mean, he's averaging like 8 yards a clip, and he's been a big part of their rushing offense. The other one is the KJ Jefferson number we talked about earlier.
That's right.
I think it was at 55 or something, and I think he's going to go over that as well. Quarterback rushing props are always intriguing to me. For some reason, it's really a great place to find a prop. I find the props for quarterback rushing. We've actually hit on Anthony Martinez a few times this season. It's always a little bit sneaky low, and the other one is tight ends. Tight ends, you can always find a pretty good one, like the Brock Bowers one I mentioned earlier. You can always seem to find a tight end. It's the quarterbacks passing and the receivers, and the rushing yards for running backs. Those are always in line with their averages, but you can always find a good value. So Bo Nix, KJ, and Malik Cunningham. I got to find that number while you're talking because that's a good one too.
Yeah. If you can, the Clifford one. The only thing that makes that tough for me is, I mean, first of all, not only does Ohio State have the good run defense, not only have the good defensive front, I don't trust Penn State's offensive line. Penn State's offensive, they've been okay at suppressing sacks, which is like, your big thing you're afraid of when you bet the over on a college quarterback's rushing prop. Because in college, unlike in the NFL, they deduct your sack yardage away from you. You're just wondering how many times you're going to get sacked today and then take that away from the passing thing. So we'll see about that. I also think Penn State's going to lean so heavily into that short passing game and then see if their receivers can make any plays after the snap that we'll see how many times there's even extended passing plays where then he could get the ability to run out. I'm not sure how many design runs they're going to give him against that nasty Ohio State defensive front when Clifford was just injured a couple weeks ago.
If they have one scheduled run for Sean Clifford, then maybe James Franklin needs to be fired.
I wouldn't do it. Yeah, you don't want to get him injured in this game doing that stuff. So I probably should have done on that.
Malik's 77.5. I don't like it. That's too high for me. He's averaging like 84 a game, but that's too high. If he was like at 61 or something, I would take the over. But Malik is 77.5.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the market probably likes the over on that one too, I'm curious what it opened up at. But it is. I'm going over anyway. Malik. Yeah, on Bo Nix. Bo Nix is probably the more interesting one to me because, like we were talking about last week, like he's run for a lot more yards this year than you would think. That would probably be the one out of the two that maybe I would lean over on. Out of the two guys that Mike L had brought up. One other one looks like our last question of the day. Mike Huseman asked us. UCLA minus 16.5 against Stanford. How do you feel about that game with the big spread? Mike, do you have any thoughts on the UCLA and Stanford one?
Stanford's so difficult to project. I'm trying to see what the over-under is because that's a game that, to me, might have a juicy over-under number.
Total on that game, is it 64.5 still? That's what it was last time we updated the sheet.
Yeah, let me see. But I don't like a side on that one. I mean, if I had to, I would take UCLA, but I don't trust them. The 64.5 is the over-under. I would probably go under on that, but that's just it's not an intriguing. It's a game you have to bet because it's the late night game and you have to watch something into 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. on the East Coast. But Stanford's just too difficult for me to gauge, really. So I wouldn't take the side. I would take the under.
Yeah, and Mike, I love your point about how the late night games are not good tonight. Usually, almost always, I try to get at least one late night game for us to talk about. Then they're there, but I couldn't force it this time. Like, we don't have any good late night games. It's actually good timing for me personally because tomorrow I'm going to the Vikings-Cardinals NFL game, and we're getting up early to tailgate with the buddies. So the fact that there's not a watchable late night game tonight actually plays into my favor for once.
Sleep, actually,
I'm going to try to sleep on a Saturday night. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least the college football schedule is facilitating it for me a little bit because I don't want to watch this game either. It is though a game where in as much as you can, selling high on Stanford potentially and buying low on UCLA, it's kind of funny to say, even in my head, it's hard to get that out because obviously UCLA is favored by 16.5. But this line would be high, it'd be in the low 20s if Stanford hadn't covered 3 straight games, with 2 of those, the last 2 being outright wins. And then UCLA, the last time that we saw them, they were getting clowned by Oregon. So, I mean, that has suppressed this line and gotten it beneath 17. I think probably I would, if I had to bet, I'm definitely not going to bet it because, Mike, I agree with you. There's games on the card that have better value where you can hunt around for better value than this. The margins become a little bit, narrow with the spread like this, but I would lean UCLA if I had to bet this one, but hopefully I can fall asleep beforehand, so I don't need to do an action bet on it. Stanford's defense just stinks so much. And the one thing that UCLA's defense isn't great, but it can take away explosive plays. Didn't completely do it against Oregon, but it's one thing that they can do. So Stanford's going to have to nick them down the field. I don't know if Stanford's offense can do that.
I mean, Stanford's defense is bad, but they've actually only given up 14 points in each of their last 2 games. And I think they've come up with an offensive strategy where they can hold the ball enough to sort of suppress that over. But again, you really don't know what you're getting with these 2 teams. I mean, UCLA is vastly overrated. And Stanford's just not a good football team. So what do you do with those 2? I have no idea.
I don't either. Mike, I think that's – oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you get to see Kyler Murray in person. Have you ever seen him in person before?
Kyler Murray?
Yeah.
Not before tomorrow. That's going to be my first time because, when he was at Oklahoma, I didn't see him. I didn't see him when he was playing for your boy Sumlin at A&M. So this will be my first time to, take him in.
Are your seats nosebleed? Or are you going to be anywhere near the field?
So we bought nosebleeds, but it's because we don't like to sit down there in the game. I get this is probably going to be too much inside baseball on Thor, but the thing I hate the most about especially the NFL games is when you're sitting in the middle of a row and then on both sides of you, people, it's stretching out. There's people in front of you, there's people behind you. I need to be able to move more than that. So we bought the nosebleeds, but we're not going to sit in the seats at all. They have a mezzanine down there where you can just stand. We're just going to be standing the whole game and acting fools, I think. In that one, excited to watch Kyler.
The reason I ask is because I want you to just get a gauge for how small he is as a human being. I think you're going to be stunned.
I had a buddy yesterday who told me he saw this tweet that someone had written, and he can't unsee it. The tweet said, "Kyler Murray looks like a little kid running away from his parents whenever he scrambles." And my buddy said, he's as a parent, he's just not been able to take that out of his mind ever since then. Kyler kind of runs like this with the arms chugging, whatever. Everyone, that's all the time that we got for today. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of College Football Game Day Live. For Mike Farrell, the godfather of recruiting, I'm Thor Nystrom. Good luck with your bets today, and we will see you next week.